Hello students, this is Arvind Singh, your English language teacher. I will be teaching you main course book, and I believe you all are staying home and having this new experience of online classes. You must be aware that due to COVID-19 pandemic disease, our nation is locked down, and that's why our school has started this kind of classes. This is online classes. We are providing you subject materials through online, and today we are going to study the first chapter of your main book, that is the selfish giant. This chapter is a story. This story is written by Oscar Wilde. He was a well-known Irish author. He was born in 1854 and died in 1900. He had written so many plays, fictions, poetries, and epigrams. He was one of the most popular author of his time. He also wrote moral stories for children. The story The Selfish Giant is taken from his collection, that is The Happy Prince and Other Tales, which was published in 1888. 1818 ईस्वी में ये publish हुआ था. So let's start our first chapter, The Selfish Giant. This story is all about a selfish giant. We will get to know why this giant is called selfish later on in the story. He lives in a castle which has a beautiful garden. He owns a castle, and there was a garden as well in that castle. He is selfish and dislikes children. That giant is a selfish giant, and he doesn't like children. But when Spring refuses to visit his garden, he learns to appreciate kids and grows to love them immensely. But due to his hate towards kids, towards children, once spring, the season, didn't come to his garden, and then he realized his mistake and he started loving children. Why the Spring refused to visit his garden, we will know in this story. That is The Selfish Giant. Let's start it. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass here and there. Over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 patch trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The garden, the castle, was situated on the way of the children's school. So every afternoon, when children used to come from the school, they go to that garden, the giant's garden, and they used to play over there. That garden was a huge garden. It was a very large garden and having so much trees. Soft green grasses here and there. And when spring comes, when was its season, the trees, the flowers blossoms like stars in pink or pearl colors. And in the autumn season, when the autumn comes, that trees, that grasses bore fruits, so many kinds of fruits. The birds sat on the trees and sang so swiftly that the kids used to stop their games to listen to them. And since the garden was rich with flowers, with fruits, and various kinds of birds used to come to that garden, and when the children come from the school and go there to play, they hear twittering and melodious sound of birds, and they used to stop their game and listen to the birds, their twittering, their activities. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. And they used to tell each other that how happy we are here, we are feeling so much pleasure by playing here and moving around. One day the giant came back to his castle. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. But soon their good time ended. Soon children's good time ended when one day the giants, the owner of the castle and the garden, came there, over there. Actually, he had been to his friend. His name was the Cornish ogre. He belongs to Cornwall, a country in England, and he had been to him, and he had stayed there, over there, for 7 years. And after 7 years, when he came back to his own castle, he saw so many children were playing over there. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "I will allow nobody to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all round it and put up a notice board. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." And then when he saw so many children were playing in his garden, he got mad at them, he got angry at them, and he shouted on them, "This is my garden, and nobody is permitted, nobody is allowed to set his foot in my garden. It is for me only. My garden is my garden. Nobody can play in it. Just me. It's just me who can stay there, who can play in my garden." And that's why he built a wall all round the garden and put a notice board on it. The notice board says, trespassers will be prosecuted. Means nobody is allowed into the garden. If anyone comes, he will be prosecuted. He will have to face the consequences. He was a very selfish giant. The poor children now had nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they didn't like it. They used to wander round the high wall when their lessons were over and to talk about the beautiful garden inside. how happy we were there, they said to each other. And this shows how selfish the giant was. And when the giant eradicated a wall around his garden and put a notice board that says trespassers will be executed. Boys, children were not allowed over there. They were banned to enter the garden. And then they started playing on the road. But the road was dusty. There was so much dirt and dust, over there. And the road was also stony. There were so many stones lying on the road. So it was also a risky, thing to do on the road. And so the boys didn't like play on the road, and that's why they had nowhere to play. They had no ground, no playground to play anywhere. Okay, and then they said each other softly how happy we were. How happy we were there. हम वहां पे कितने खुश थे. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds didn't come to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower puts its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. Okay, and slowly children stopped playing in the garden or on the road, and time went away. Days converted into weeks, and weeks converted into months. And when it was the season of spring, the spring came came in the country. There were little blossoms all over the country, and little birds were twittering happily. But there was no spring in the garden of selfish giant, because there were no children, because there were no birds, and that's why spring didn't come to his garden. Once a little flower came out of the surface. He put his head high, and then he saw there is no spring in the garden, and he suddenly saw the notice board which was saying trespassers will be executed, and that's why children are bad to enter the garden. He again go that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. And after seeing that, the flower went back inside the ground and he slept. This was a few paragraphs of this chapter, The Selfish Giant. Rest paragraph we will study in our next class. Thank you very much.